So what's up? We are going to be looking at the upcoming Kickstarters for next week, January 25 through 29, the last full week in January before we hit the February slide. So, what is on the horizon? We've already seen a couple big projects this month. Let's take a look at what you should expect to pop up on your radar on Kickstarter next week. Full disclaimer on some of these, they have been announced for January or the end of January. So I'm going to include ones that are, in theory, going to be launching sometime in the next, 7 to 9 days. But because some of them don't have definitive dates, also don't be surprised if you don't see those because Kickstarter delays to the launch of the campaign are relatively common. So without further ado, let's take a look. So first up, we actually have Human Punishment: The Beginning. And this is a standalone sequel to Human Punishment. It's a semi-co-op social deduction hybrid type game. And it's really getting a lot of hype. The Kickstarter preview page is actually up, the private one that you can actually view the page on, not just the one where you can click to be notified. And there are some very interesting quotes on there. I'll see if I can pull it up in a minute. Like BSG, and it's giving it a run for its money. And that's pretty hefty praise prior to launching a campaign. So to compare it to one of the most well-known, well-acclaimed in general semi-co-ops. So it's a 3 to 6 player game. You're either machines, machine revolutionists, or you're outlaws. So there are 3 separate factions that you're trying to navigate between, and you're all having your own separate goals. They have this new system called the Connecting World system, which gives you also the option to combine the previous game, Human Punishment Social Deduction, with this game. So here you go. I'll try and throw this link in the comments if I remember this time, so bear with me. But here is the live preview page, if you will. And already you can see it's a 2 to 3 hour game, which is actually a relatively long game for a social deduction. I have not personally played this game, but it comes with a lot of different stuff. The core game is 55 euros, you can already see. And if you're getting the all-in, which includes the deluxe component upgrades, that's a big jump. That's a 35 euro jump. So these deluxe components must be relatively expensive and numerous. So here we go. This game can knock Battlestar Galactica off its throne. Those are big words to be throwing around. But you know what? Go big or go home in this market nowadays. So again, there's already a couple videos up on Board Game Geek from a couple of these guys. So if you want to take a look, there's a 5-minute how to play video. Here are the pledges. As we talked about, here's the how to play. It basically just talks about what you can do. You're each a unique ghost character with individual skill tree and inventory. You know what? And then after this launches, this is unique enough that I would be interested because this also has a unique feature that it's a good 4, 5, and 6 player count, especially the 5 and 6, and I don't have too many of those games. I really am going to probably watch this one pretty closely. I'll probably read through the rulebook as well, so I can maybe even give a separate video on my thoughts on this. Looks like they're going to have a Dice Tower video and a Quackalope video, so you're going to have the big players out there as well. You can ignore me. So resource cards, event cards, all sorts of stuff, miscellaneous cards. There's a little pick up and deliver. Now that's the one thing that probably worries me the most because I am not a pick up and delivery type of person. Okay, there you go. It's poker chips. That's why it's 35 euros. Instead of cardboard chips, you're getting high quality poker chips. And as if you've seen with Wonderland's War or any of the chip theory games, that's expensive and it's Kickstarter exclusive. So there you go. And how much stretch goals? I think these have done relatively well in the past. So I would not be surprised to see this easily break 6 digits. And I would be a little surprised if it didn't right now. So again, a whole host of videos down here at the bottom. And we'll see sort of how it goes. I'm actually really intrigued, more so after looking at this page. So it will definitely be on my radar, as if I need another 90 euro pledge. Next up, on the 25th, we have Mob the Big Apple. And this really reminds me a little bit of the highly underrated area control game, The Sons of Anarchy. But I think it's a little bit different because this also has worker placement, where you're using dice to determine how many guys and where you're going to be allocating them in order to perform their tasks. All of these are nefarious, evil tasks, as you would expect as part of a crime family. And so you're going to be battling over places in the city in order to control it. And it looks like a relatively small, lighter game, but just judging by this. But it looks like with the dice, you can see that they all have areas 1 through 6 there. And then you've got a little bit more worker placement up here at the top. So This is probably one that I think is worth checking out if you're looking for something a little bit lighter on the worker placement style, but not completely Euro in its full mechanism because of the dice involvement. Obviously, the other thing is that it looks like there's some sort of battle or, fight at the end of each round. So if you don't like that in your Euro games, you're probably not going to like it. But if you like a hybrid amalgam of those, this is worth checking out maybe on the 25th when this launches. Launching on the 26th now, we have Cryptid Cafe. So you are basically one of these mythical Sasquatches, and you are trying to run and operate a cafe. And it's sort of a little bit of asymmetry in terms of powers, but it's also sort of, who can do pick up, deliver the most in terms of worker placement here, as you can see. So you're going to be trying to feed these monsters whatever they want, and if you don't feed them quickly enough, you're not going to get a tip, and if you really make them mad, they're going to leave and not come back or patron you again. So here's a little bit more of the setup. You can see you each are feeding your monsters that are in front of you, and you have resources that you're trying to use, and then you're getting the resources from here. So again, not my style of game, but it looks like it's something different than what's out there in terms of the mashups, especially with, a relatively unique theme. So it definitely makes it stand out. How well it will do, especially in the tough Euro market, is something that remains to be seen. The other thing that apparently this has that some of the other Euro games do not have is that there apparently is some take that, because it's listed as one of the mechanisms here. Obviously you're going to have some special abilities maybe that will affect you, but also maybe affect your fellow competitor servers. So not going to be one that I'm probably going to look at too deeply, but it's interesting enough that it definitely, like I mentioned, stands out from the crowd. So it's an indie type game that is exactly what Kickstarter is for. Also launching on the 26th is Reload. That is a battle royale game. Now this is the attempted tabletop port of something like Player Underground's Battlegrounds, the big multiplayer online type game. And I'm not really sure if this translates. They tried a few years ago with Adrenaline to sort of port a first-person shooter. And as much as I like first-person shooters, I don't really want to play a first-person shooter as a board game. So I've never really found the appeal there. But I know that this has been pondered. They've done D&D one-offs with this on various places because it's a great concept. But like some of the MOBA games, how well does that concept translate onto the tabletop scene remains to be actually literally seen. It's got sort of a hex approach. There's a couple previews out right now, and honestly, it's not quite what I was expecting, and I'm assuming obviously this is a prototype, but I hope that there is a little bit of design upwards in the actual campaign production values, because it's going to need it, I think, to attract the eyes initially, given the competition. I'm not saying this is bad by any means. This is better than I could do by far. But with all of the bars being raised subsequently, week by week and year by year, you almost have to nowadays. And so I'll be interested to see what the final product looks like. But especially that type of game compared to a dungeon crawler, I'm going to go with the dungeon crawler personally, but check it out on the 26th because it's definitely going to be a unique concept if they can make it work. Now, the next up are a couple games that are listed as January, but have yet, as far as I'm aware, to have an announced date. So just keep them on your radar. This is called Zodiac War. So more of an astrology type game. And already, that's pretty impressive art. I've never looked at this page before. I like what I'm seeing, and hopefully the gameplay matches the aesthetic, because that's the type of aesthetic that I was just talking about that I don't think Reload had, that immediately attracts your eye to go, tell me more. Apparently, it's going to feature a rotating board, which again is a very unique take. Authentic themes of personality, so you're using astrology, the signs, your Pisces, your Leo, your Gemini, those sorts of things. You're drawing on the power of tarot, so you're combining those two elements of things. And you're having card drafting, a little bit of take that, and a little bit of variable power. So those things are all terms that are right up my alley. So this is probably one that I'm going to keep a close eye on. I think something like this, given the extent of the art, I wonder if the price point is actually going to be higher. So what you're doing in this game, it says, is you're reading your horoscope. So you're drawing a zodiac card, and then whatever planet enters your sign, it may bring good things or bad things, depending on what it is. Then you're rotating the board to play your tarot cards. And there's a lot of tarot cards, 78, it says, just like a real tarot deck. And then you're going to manipulate the game and the board by using the tokens that you have. I really kind of want to see this one in action now. This sort of seems like a little bit of a different Splendor-ish, only taken to the next level, because you can see just by some of the pictures of the boards that there is a lot going on this board. It is not just a simple one board mechanism. It looks like you have 2 or 3 possible ring levels here of different things. And you can see the signs here, the planets here, and then also the elements on the outside. You're going to be using crystals to buy and sell, it looks like. And you can see even the art on these cards is pretty detailed. Now, the question is, how much are these going to influence, and what powers are these going to have, and how do they play in? And then here are your bigger constellations. So this is pretty impressive, actually, especially if this is a first-time game designer. So I'm gonna definitely have this one on my radar. Check it out, though. We don't know when it's gonna actually launch, so as soon as I know something, I'll let you know. Again, another one that's been rumored in January, Candy Wars. Candy Wars, right? You know, and there's very, very little to go on here. You're controlling gnomes, battling with candy to control and complete objectives around a 3D map using special weapons. I'm assuming take that and power up moves. So it sounds like Candy Wars, the take on King of Tokyo, if you will. So let's just take a glance here at what this looks like. So again, that's interesting. The 3D is definitely there. And I'm not sure I necessarily want miniatures, because I wonder at the price point then. But this looks like an intriguing concept, because this looks like more like a kid's game that is taken to the literal and figurative next level. Excuse the pun, I'm sorry. Couldn't resist. The question just again is, when is it launching? Are these miniatures necessary? Because on a game like this, I'd almost rather have the King of Tokyo standees for a lower price point, to be honest. Even though this could just be some good dice chucking fun. Next up, we have Anansi. If I'm pronouncing that right, I'm sorry. If I pronounced it wrong, I messed it up. This is a trick-taking card game. So if you're not a trick-taking card game player like I am, this is going to completely be something that's not on your radar and you don't have any interest in whatsoever. But you're also telling a story with the tricks that you're taking in this game. You're trying to get followers. I know that feeling. And you're going to be playing a card not to the trick, but for its indicated number of followers that's on the card itself, because you want to match up your followers with the stories in order to inspire them, because it grants you points and favor throughout the game. The other interesting thing is that the cards that you're going to play can affect the trump suit. So you can have trump suit change several times in a game. And that's really interesting. You don't see that mechanism a lot in trick-taking games where the trump is constantly changing or other cards have a direct influence. You see it sometimes between rounds or between hands, but you don't always see it within them. And so that'd be interesting to see how they're going to do that. And it says it's actually from the same game line as Spicy. So that's a relatively good pedigree to go off of. And if this is reasonably priced, this might be something intriguing to look at. Now, the problem is, and you can see already here, is Miniature Market already has it pre-ordered available for $12. So why would I back this on Kickstarter if it's $12? So what's gonna motivate me? So hopefully it will show me something that is really interesting and worth getting on Kickstarter rather than picking up at retail. Because I like trying to support these types of games sometimes. I really do. Last up is Forest of Radgost. And again, this is more on the Slavic myth of 2 children entering a forest full of creatures from the Slavic mythos. And there's a couple previews out there. There's a couple written reviews as well. And it's more of a narrative type stuffed fables-esque game where you are exploring in the forest, trying to achieve certain objectives, but also then trying to rescue these children and find out where they are. And you can see that there is a lot of movement, and there's apparently a lot of narrative element. You can see a book of encounters over here. So maybe a little bit of the Agents of Smersh thrown in, a little bit of Arabian Nights, if you will. I really don't get a good sense of what this game is actually going to be, and this is one that I really want to see get a good gameplay video of, so that you can see whether or not this is something that would be good for the kids or a little bit higher level than that. I don't quite get a good understanding of where that is, because you have characters, and it's a little bit of the, like I said, the role-playing-esque game with characters unique that have their own backstory, motivation, skill set. You're going along that path that I mentioned, and you have to figure out what you're going to do without knowing what type of creature you're going to face, if you're going to run, hide, flee, or communicate with pre-encounter. And it also says there's going to be 9 different decks in order to mitigate all the stuff. So that's a lot of stuff. And if you're going to go for something that expansive, good luck. I mean, that sounds relatively adventurous in terms of what you're trying to accomplish. So I can't wait to see what this one actually looks like. Whether or not it'd be something I'd back, I don't really know yet. But I'm intrigued enough because, again, it stands out among the crowd. So it's going to get me to take a look at it when some of the other things won't. So right now, that's about it. Now, there are a lot of other games that are also date unknown with Q1 listed as the anticipated launch date. So I wouldn't be surprised if you see a few games that we have not expected nor heard a lot about to pop up in this last week and a half of January. So if they do, I'll try and include them, because there's always a couple surprises out there that get your attention or get your money. It happens to me every year. And, I'm always intrigued because it's usually stuff that I've never even thought about in the first place. So if I'm missing something, let me know. If there's something else you're interested in, let me know. Like I said, a couple of these games, if a couple of these launch by the end of January, like they're supposed to in theory, I will definitely be putting out videos on specific whether or not it's worth backing and what my feelings are. If you like this sort of thing, if you're interested, if you want to hear my opinions, if you want to hear my ramblings or my rants or just my coverage of whatever is interesting to me, throw me a sub. I'd appreciate it. As always, thank you. Thank you for taking the time to comment, like, whatever, subscribe, whatever. I really do appreciate it. So, as always, have a great weekend. Play some games, maybe. Have some fun. Whatever you do. Stay classy.